Want to play? When's the last time you've asked someone if they wanted to play? For me, I think back to being in elementary school, getting off the school bus, running in the house, putting my backpack down, picking up the house phone, yes, house phone, and calling my next door neighbor. Hey, Brittany, do you want to play? It was a pivotal part of my childhood. What about yours? Welcome back to the WinShape Marriage Podcast. I'm your host, Marlee Arnold, and today we're going to be talking about play. That's right, play is not just for toddlers, elementary school kids, or even teenagers. Play is for adults too. It's a vital part of your marriage relationship. I'm joined by Julie Baumgardner, Senior Director of WinShape Marriage, along with Bradley Joseph, a team leader of facilitation at the WinShape Foundation, and one of our very own experts on play. We're excited to jump into this dynamic and fun conversation. Let's get started. Julie, Bradley, thank you so much for being here. We're so excited to have you guys as guests on the WinShape Marriage Podcast. So we're excited to have you. Julie, I know you've been with us before, but Bradley, for those who are listening or watching who don't know you, before we jump into our conversation, would you just tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do for the WinShape Foundation?
Yeah. Bradley Joseph, first name, last name, no middle name. And with that, for me, I am a team leader of the facilitation team with the foundation. So for us as a team, we help the different ministries and support in whatever way it is that we can to help provide those experiences that brings about opportunities for transformation.
Awesome.
I tell him that I think about them as the experiential discipleship guides because they really set the table for us to help couples experience transformation.
Yeah, we do what we can.
No, that's great. And I know that we use this term experiential. We use this term experiential learning. Really, it's kind of a fancy term for play and playing together. And our conversation today is going to be just shaped around having fun, playing together with your spouse on one of the most important teams. So with that, if Julie, do you want to just kick us off? Tell us a little bit about what we mean when we say that at WinShape Marriage Retreats, we bring experiential learning into those experiences. What does that mean?
For us, I think one of the things we've learned is that when you just sit and soak, a lot of times you don't soak in a lot. And our goal is that you would take all your senses and you would be able to experience different things while you're with us at WinShape so that you're seeing something, you're hearing something, you're actually in the midst of doing something that speaks to the concept that we're trying to teach.
Yeah. What would be an example of, say, at a courageous communication retreat, what would be an example of a teaching element and then pairing that with an experiential learning element?
Well, we might teach about the different levels of communication because so many couples really stay very surfacey because it feels safe, yet they say what they want is to be deeply known and loved. So we may talk about that concept straight out of the gates at an experience, and then the very next thing that you do is go and experience some learning through a type of play where we're doing exercises where you might have a lot going on. It's very, very noisy, and you're trying to communicate with your spouse, and they have to listen very intently for your voice, which speaks to there's a lot of chaos in the culture today and in our marriages and just families. There's a lot going on. How often do you listen that intently to hear your spouse's voice?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you tell couples, you have a teaching moment for them where it is a little bit of that sit and soak for a moment. And then you bring Bradley's team into the mix to bring couples into that experiential part of it. Bradley, I'm curious, what do you see as a facilitator what do you see in couples? Like, what's kind of their reaction when you first
Oh,
are introduced to them and you're like, hey, this is Bradley. He's going to lead us through some experiences together. What's kind of on the receiving end of that a lot of times?
Wow, it's a lot for sure. On one end, for people who naturally come to retreats or any type of experience, whether it's a convention or something along those lines, usually the thought is that I'm showing up to kind of consume. This is for me to just kind of get as much as I can and then walk away, and maybe I'll do something with it later.
Yeah.
But we shape the experiences so that people can actually be a part of contributing to that space. So when we talk about play and other things along those lines, it's like you get to contribute in some form or fashion to what's going on here. And this is one way you'll have the opportunity to do that. So when people hear that, initially it's like, what? I'm gonna have to stand and do something, or I'm gonna have to say something, whatever it is. But when they actually get into the mix of it, it's pretty cool to see just how their facial expression changes, how their body softens, how you can just kind of see them breathe a bit, because for some, I mean, it's probably been years since the last time that they actually had a time to just simply engage in play and just simply be in the experience, rather than trying to think of all the 100 things that's on the task or to-do list, or trying to navigate all the factors of life in that regard, but just simply be in that moment. And even the flip side of that, when adults hear play, usually the first thing that comes to mind is children and not adults. So the question comes up of, what does it actually even look like for me, so to speak, as an adult to play? And we get to engage in that opportunity with them.
Yeah.
I think it's so fun in the very beginning, because a lot of times there are some eye rolls and like, you're asking us to do what?
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's very hushed.
Yes.
But as the time progresses, it goes from quiet almost to like this loud roar.
Yeah.
You hear people laughing and cutting up and having a good time. It's fun to watch the progression.
Yeah. And I think back to what you were saying with like the to-do list and things, it's almost like you come in with this preconceived notion. I mean, I'm guilty of it too, of, okay, I'm going to attend these 4 sessions. I'm going to check these 4 sessions off my to-do list. And you're still kind of in that frame of mind of, I'm just going to receive, consume, get this done, check this off. And then when you're tasked with this opportunity of engaging and getting up and moving, it's like, oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
I wasn't so sure about that. But I like what you said. Just, I think it's cool on y'all's perspective as teachers and facilitators and leaders to see like physically, like the reactions from your face, your breathing, things like that.
When you think about it, our culture is intense and people are adulting.
Yes.
Their lives are full.
Right.
And I just don't, I think people see play as a luxury, or they really do equate it with, oh, that's what children do, not what adults do.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, that leads perfectly into one of the questions I was going to ask, which is, for anybody listening, I think they're still probably like, I think they're still probably trying to process even what we're saying as we're getting into this topic of play, because I don't think there's ever really a time where I look at Cody and say, do you want to play? Like, maybe you want to go on a date. But like, I think back to being a kid, and that was what you did. Like, you called your neighbor and you're
let's
like,
go play.
hey,
let's
you want to play? Like, what, you know, what are you doing? And so in your brain, that's a childlike behavior. Or you think about your kids come up to you, Mommy, Daddy, will you play with me? But that's not something you think of for adults. So let's tap into that just a little bit more and tell me, because it probably doesn't look like, you know, playing with Barbie dolls or playing with, you know, action figures or whatever the case may be. What does playing in marriage look like? What are some examples of playing? And teaser, we're going to get into some like actual play types a little bit later in the episode, but just in general.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much that goes into it. For my wife and I, we love playing, for one.
Yeah.
We play board games.
Okay.
We play while we watch shows and movies. Sometimes we say, hey, let's watch this show. And we're going to talk about all the things it is that kind of stood out to us on the back end and just have more of a playful conversation around it. It's funny too, because sometimes even if we're watching some like animated movie on the back end, she's like, oh, those little bears, I'm just going to take a moment to pray for them. And I'm like, it wasn't real, right? But even in that space, it's like because we kind of immerse ourselves into the situation, it allows us to feel our emotions. It allows us to think our thoughts and do it in a way to where it's in an inviting environment. A lot of times we even allow our kids to lead the space of play because sometimes we need that reminder. So we say, hey, LB or Theo or whatever it is, it's like, what would you like to do right now? And it's like, a dance party. And it's like, all right, we're going to do a dance party.
Nice.
And sometimes we've even taken the opportunity to do those dance parties, just the two of us. Even just last night, after putting the kids to bed, we decided she was like, I just want to look at the moon. And I was like, sure, let's look at the moon. And we were talking about the stars. And we just had like a 2-hour conversation after putting the kids to bed of just like being in that space, being with each other. So the play can look different in so many ways. It doesn't have to be Barbies. Sometimes it's conversation. Sometimes it's playful thoughts. Sometimes it's playful gestures with each other and things of that nature, whether it's just a high five or just a cool little look that we give to each other. And sometimes it's full interactions, but the opportunities are endless.
I love that. Just even those examples, again, because we're so conditioned to thinking it has to be this one way, and even thinking about like, no, there's ways to be playful through even watching a TV show or something, which you wouldn't naturally be inclined to think, oh, that's playful. But I think what I'm hearing you saying, and correct me if this is incorrect, but is that a lot of times it's just removing some of the seriousness of the adulting. So it's just doing things that feel more low key, relaxed. There's not a lot of stakes involved. You're not. Go ahead.
I mean, that's the true definition. The true definition of play is an activity where there is no goal. There's no end game. It just is what you're doing. So stargazing, looking at the moon, laughing together, being playful.
What are some of the benefits for your marriage when you play with your spouse?
I was just, in listening to you, thinking about, it's almost like when you play, you remove the cobwebs out of your brain. Because we are so bound to technology, and they even say that just being able to decompress from technology actually takes days. Being able to put it down, focus on your spouse, and be playful, it takes some time because we are so engaged with technology. So the benefits are when you are playing with your spouse, there's laughter involved. So you get the feel-good hormones going, and you're like, this feels good to do this with my spouse, to laugh and to be playful. The dopamine drip, it reminds you, we have fun together. Even when you're in the midst of a super hard time, play can be incredibly beneficial. It can help you be more creative. It can help you when you're dealing with some tension in your life that isn't going to go away tomorrow. It can actually help you to manage that better. So there are lots of benefits of play within marriage.
That's awesome.
I mean, and even going along those lines, when you have that opportunity to actually play with each other and you engage in that, you see each other in more of that playful manner and that fun manner. So when you look at your spouse, you're thinking, fun, rather than, oh man, the stress or whatever it may be, and other things along those lines. You're more likely to even be forgiving one towards another, because when you're in that state of seriousness, it's like, you did something wrong. Now we have to fix it. Whereas when you're playing, even if you make a mistake, it's like, it's okay. Let's try that again. And that's more of the mentality that you have when you're engaging one with another. So I've seen it even for my wife and I when we're in more of those playful states, how much more sensitive we are to each other, how much more we're leaning in versus leaning back, and just so many other factors that kind of play off of that.
You know, the other thing I think is that so many people say, young people say, why would I want to get married? I watched my parents, their marriage looked boring and not fun. And I think when we're playful as a couple and our kids see that, they're like, oh, you can be married and have a good time and enjoy each other's company.
Yeah. That's awesome. And isn't that one of the, I mean, especially if you have children, one of the main goals is to disciple them and raise them up and kind of show them the way. And so what better way to do that than also just by having fun? Like you think about, oh, I got to teach my kids like how to budget and I need to disciple them spiritually. And all of those things are important and you want to raise good, strong children. But it's like, it's important to just teach them also to have fun and to look for fun and, you know, a spouse one day. And
what's the saying? More is caught than taught just by watching people. And so I think when you are enjoying each other's company and playful, you're definitely teaching that to your children.
Yeah, that's great.
True.
So you kind of said it a little bit ago, Bradley, but you were giving us some examples of you and your wife, and it got me thinking about how, again, play can be so many things. There's so many types of play. And there's actually these things called play personalities that we teach at WinShape sometimes. And we've talked about before. And this was new to me. I did not know this was a thing before coming on at WinShape. And so there are different play personalities that kind of like a personality test, you might have a different play type than your spouse. Again, sounded completely foreign to me. It's okay if you're listening and that sounds foreign to you. We're going to break it down here because I do think it's really helpful to be like, oh, maybe that's why I didn't enjoy that as much, but I enjoyed this more. So we're going to run through these play types if that's okay. And we'd love, Julie, Bradley, for you to just kind of tell us a little bit more about what they are, kind of explain them for our listeners. And then also, if you've got any examples of playing in this play type, let's throw them out there too. So the more examples, the merrier. So we'll start here with, there is a play personality called collector. And so, Julie, what would you say is that? What is a collector?
So a collector is someone who likes to collect things and they find joy in that. And it really could be anything, a collection of cars, a collection of pocket knives, a collection of Beanie Babies, or, you know, anything like that. That is a form of play for them. Are you a collector?
I am not a collector. My son, my oldest son actually is a collector. And I'll mention this briefly because he learned how to read as well as do just base mathematics because he loved Pokemon. And he wanted to play Pokemon, the trading card game with me. And in that space, the first time he and I played Pokemon like in its full the first time, took about 5 hours. We were up to about 2 in the morning. So it was a lot of fun. It was a long time. But what I found was he was able to learn how to read and do basic math because you have to figure out the health points and things of that nature, read the powers of the Pokemon on the cards. And then he taught my second son those realities and taught him how to read and do basic math through playing. And since then, I mean, he has hundreds of Pokemon cards. So he's definitely the collector type, but for me, not so much.
That's amazing.
It's a lot of fun.
We actually, I feel like going through these it's going to be a little bit of like light bulbs going off for me too. Something that Cody and I love to do when we travel is we collect Christmas ornaments. So this is like one of my favorite traditions that we have. And every time we go anywhere, whether it's like, you know, a big international trip or whether it's just to a football game in a different state or something like that, we go and seek out together a Christmas ornament to collect. And so even that, low stakes, low key, lighthearted. We're like going in on a hunt together for the Christmas ornament that we want. Cool. And we have collected over a decade now so many ornaments. We have a dedicated tree, we call our travel tree. And it's our bedroom Christmas tree, and it just displays our travel Christmas ornaments. So
awesome.
Maybe I'm a collector.
So But here's a big question for you. When you put that tree up, and you put the ornaments on it, what happens?
Oh my gosh. So many smiles, so many just memories. And we have a second tradition for the tradition, which is every time we pick an ornament to hang on the tree, we like recall a memory from that trip. And so we'll pick up the ornament of the skis from Utah, and we'll be like, remember when it was my first ski trip and you taught me how to ski and I fell on the slopes and all the things. So
see, I think that really just makes the point of why people enjoy collecting.
Yeah.
Because part of it is hunting down for the ornament or whatever they're trying to find, remembering where they found it, and then the memories connected to it make you feel warm inside and joyful.
Yeah. So if you've got a spouse who's a coin collector or whatever, then hey, that's an opportunity to engage with them and play.
Yes.
Okay. Cool. So another play type is competitor. I feel like this is one everyone's going to be like, oh, like, duh, like that feels like the most obvious one or natural, but maybe more natural than collector, for example. But tell us, for those who might not know, or you might be wondering, what is competitor?
Yeah, I am definitely a competitor. For me, I definitely play to win, and that's kind of the space for the competitors, that space of challenge, and bringing out the best in themselves. And the way that I see it, I spell it as companion competition. I want to show up my best to encourage my spouse to show up her best.
Right.
And when she does that, she encourages me to show up my best all over again. So it's kind of like an upward trend in that sense of us encouraging each other to show up our best as we, so to speak, compete in different ways. We have a scrapbook. And in this scrapbook, there were a series of times where we played, for those of you that are like gamers or whatever, Sellers of Catan.
Love
and
Catan.
In that space, I won so many different games in that. But when she finally won the very first game, that was the game she took a picture of. She put in a scrapbook.
Nice.
And, I mean, even to this day, she's telling our boys of the game that she beat me in with Sellers of Catan. So in that space, it's like one of those things where that brought such a great deal of joy for her to see the competition kind of go back and forth, and to see those moments, not only where she was able to win, but where she saw that the best in her was brought out, and we got to celebrate that. So it's cool.
Absolutely.
Cool.
That's awesome.
I feel like this is a good play type for like double dating too, or having like friends, because like you can have friends over for a game night and engage in friendly competition with one another. So great.
That's all those minute to win it games, right?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure. Okay, creator. I don't know that I would typically, again, I wouldn't have naturally been inclined to be like, oh yes, a creator is being playful, but tell us how.
Well, so I think I fall into that category a lot. I love to create. And we would say that the creator personality, you might be a painter or create something with wood. But I love to bake, and I love to create in that way. And that it is play for me. It's not, people will say, oh, that must be a lot of hard work. I'm like, no, it's not hard work. It's play for me. And it makes my heart happy. So people who like to create, it could be a garden, it could be a space. You might be like a interior decorator, designer, and be creator in that way.
Yeah, cool. Director. Director is a play type, a play personality.
Yeah.
Those are the folks that like to put together events or parties. And they do it really well. It just comes naturally to them. For some people, they're like, oh my gosh, that is so much work. I would never do that. And others are like, bring it on. This is my thing.
Fun.
I love to do that. So, but they find it to be a joyful experience and playful. And I think it's so interesting with the different personalities, because you look at those, it's like, oh, I am not competitive at all. And that is not where I find play. But I for sure could see someone being a director and finding play with that.
Yeah. I think that's the cool reminder as we're moving through these, is just, hey, it's a phrase that we've used even on this podcast several times. Different is not deficient. It's just different.
It's just different.
And it's just realizing that people are engaging in play differently. It's not deficient. It's not wrong. It's just a different way that it's bringing them joy. Because as you're describing the cake baking in my brain, I'm like, if someone had me bake a cake,
it would not be fun.
I would not have a good time.
But I have a good time eating it.
Yeah.
I will say that. So.
You get to participate.
Is there a eater? Is there that a category on consuming?
Yes.
Okay, so what about explorer?
Yeah. So for the explorer, it's more of that play style that likes experiencing the new things.
Okay.
So maybe new adventures, new spaces, new experiences. So they're kind of in that space of like, we did this yesterday. Let's try something else tomorrow or today or whatever it may be in that sense. So and some of that could spell into some of the other spaces.
Yeah.
So sometimes there might be a little bit of overlap because the explorer might say, hey, yesterday we did a lot of collecting. Maybe today we can do a little bit of creating. But their desire is to try that new thing overall.
Yes.
So. Okay. Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. And I remember when I read about this one too, it might be exploring a location, like physically exploring. It could be, I think I was reading, it could be like exploring mentally, as in like reading a book or exploring through that. So there's even different ways the explorer might be different as well.
Yeah. What I love about that one in particular is that it engages the imagination.
Mm-hmm.
And we probably as adults are not great at that.
Yeah.
We want our kids to have imagination and dream, and sometimes we forget how to do that.
Yeah. So you need to call your explorer.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, we have 3 more here, which I just think is cool. There are just so many different ones. And so it just kind of relieves that pressure a little bit of like, you don't have to fit in a certain box. Like there's a lot of different ways. And I think that's kind of the theme of this conversation. It's just reminding people, hey, it's not so cut and dry with play. Like there's so many things you can do.
Well, and I think the other thing about that is that your spouse is probably different than you.
Yeah.
Maybe not, but probably has some different play personality. And so you can teach each other and engage and be curious with each other about the different play personalities. And it doesn't mean that you can't enjoy what you love.
Right.
It just means you can also engage with your spouse.
Yeah. And even if it is the same play personalities that you and your spouse have, it may show itself in a different way. Yes. So if both of you are collectors, as I mentioned, my son, he loves collecting cards.
Yeah.
But it could be where you and your spouse, one might enjoy collecting cards, the other might enjoy collecting books.
Yeah.
And there's an opportunity to even engage in that space of like, oh, what cards do you have? Which one stands out the most to you? What books do you enjoy? Which one is your favorite or for what reason? So even if you have the same play personality, there's so much to still kind of explore in that.
See, I'm going to tell that to Jay because he thinks I have too many books. I'm like, no, I'm a collector.
Yeah,
you're a collector
there you are.
after all.
There you are. Yeah.
What about Joker?
Oh my goodness, that is Jay, right?
Jay, okay.
Yeah.
The thing about being the Joker is they're just kind of a party waiting to happen, right?
Yep.
And it just rolls off their tongue. Yep. It comes very naturally. They're not working at being the Joker. They are the Joker.
Yeah, this is very true. Very true.
There's a lot of laughter involved.
Yes.
All the time.
Okay, very cool. I am so scared I'm going to pronounce this wrong. Kinesthete?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Tell us what that means.
That is the person that just simply likes to move.
Okay. All the time.
In whatever way, form, or fashion. I even have a good deal of that in me where even throughout the years, and I still have it in my car now where I keep a football, basketball, extra pair of shoes, change of clothes. Because if people are playing and it's like they're moving, I'm like, hey, do you need one? Whatever it may be on that
That's
front.
excellent.
So
I love that.
So in that regard, that is the person that just simply enjoys movement in whatever form or opportunity. Really.
Okay, very cool. And the last one is Storyteller.
Yeah. Some people are, you can tell a story.
Yeah.
And then there are the people who are the storytellers, and they're just amazing. They draw you in.
Yeah.
They start and you are hooked.
Yeah.
And they love it, and they find it as something that feeds their soul.
Okay.
Yeah. And it is definitely a form of play.
Okay. Very cool. So is there a way you can take a play personality quiz or something that we could link in this episode? Or is this a thing where you just kind of read and observe like what
I think you could look at the different play personalities
Okay.
and maybe even make it a date where you go and you say, well, what do you think I am?
Yeah.
And then you say, that could be right. And I think I have a little of this in me too, because it's not that you're just one type.
Yep.
It may be that you lean more towards a specific one.
Okay.
But we all probably have a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit of each of them in us in that regard.
So we'll link in the description of this episode the resource that kind of walks you through in more detail those play personalities for people.
And there's a quiz that's associated with that resource as well, so people can take that quiz too.
Okay, cool. See if it matches what you anticipate it matching. So we kind of touched on this a little bit, but just want to give maybe one or two more examples of a way that you could engage with your spouse in playing. So if someone truly is the competitor, and then you have another person who is the creator. What is a good just next step in saying, okay, well, I want to learn about that. I want to engage in that. I want you to do the same for me. So how would you go about?
Yeah. On one, that curiosity is just a beginning point.
Okay.
On some fronts, it's more so like opening yourself up for play. It's very easy to kind of have the thought of play be something that's like outside of you that you have to engage with in that sense. So I'm only going to play if people are playing board games, or I'm only going to play if someone's already engaging in a story and telling that story, versus having that mindset of saying, what does it look like for me to embody that mindfulness of play? How can I set myself up for it? What are some things that maybe I can kind of relax within my own self? How can I show up and be present within this space rather than thinking about all the other things that's going on? Maybe even what are some things that I can let go of so that I can be present? So overall, showing up in the space to be open to play, and then inviting your spouse into that space. And there have been moments where my wife, she's very good at this when recognizing the moments where I'm not quite in that mindset for play. And she would tell me, she would say, hey, take 10 minutes to whatever it is that's on your mind, like write that down, take it to God, whatever it may be in that regard. And as you do that, you have that moment, but when you come back, we're going to play and let us like actually enjoy this space together. So I would say that's something that's definitely pertinent.
You know, I think about this, and I think about when Jay and I were first married. Jay has always been very playful. And I came from a really serious home where there wasn't a lot of play. And I would say through the years, he has taught me to appreciate play and how to be playful with each other. And I think it has added just a whole dimension to our marriage relationship, even, you know, going through hard times. Being playful with each other has definitely helped us navigate through that. And I love the curiosity piece because I don't care how long you've been married, continuing to be curious and continuing to learn together and try new things just brings this richness to your relationship versus, oh, I know how you're going to complete that sentence. And we're just in this routine where we do the same old, it's predictable every single day. I think play brings spice. And when you were talking about how you guys engage, it even makes me think about play is great foreplay. You know, we talk about intimacy in marriage, and a lot of people think just about sex, but really and truly, if you want great sex, play is a piece of that because when you're playful with each other, you delight in each other. And it does lead to a deeper sense of intimacy.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's great too, to just even think about like just bringing the conversation full circle to the benefits of it. And there's so many like keywords I'm hearing of. There's a benefit of connection. There's a benefit of curiosity, continued growth, continued learning, better sex. Like there's so many just things that come from just engaging and being willing to say, okay, you know what? Let's go have some fun together. What would you say to the couple who is thinking right now, like, that sounds so great. It sounds so fun. I cannot wrap my brain around having time to do that. Like, how do you have time? We put the kids to bed and like, that sounds beautiful and amazing. But by the time we put the kids to bed, I am so tired. The idea of engaging in play, I just don't even know if I could do it. So yeah, what would you say to the person that's feeling even burdened a little bit?
I would say I'm with you. I honestly, personally have had, as I mentioned, moments like that. And my wife, Tiana, she is a blessing to me. She does very well to remind me like, hey, like, take it easy. It's not as serious as you're making it out to be. And in those moments, invite play as much as you possibly can. Even in the moments where it's putting the kids to bed, there have been times where we even play with the kids like, hey, we're going to put on a song. By the time this song is done, we want everyone dressed and ready for bed. And it's like they're going and they're dancing and they're making things happen, and they do it in a timely manner while having fun, and they go to bed with a smile rather than dad being like, and it's like all that stuff just kind of going on. So inviting play as much as possible. So it's not so much so thinking of it as like play is a separate time that I have to take and engage with, but you can literally play in every moment of the day. It's just a matter of being able to be creative about that space and think about it in a bit of a different light. We play when we clean up. We play when we're having dinner at the table, playfully talk about how can we encourage each other, cool things that we see in one another, or we play the animal guessing game. We play when we're in the car. It's just one of those things where we invite those opportunities moment by moment and say, how can we truly enjoy this moment versus just simply getting through it. And when we have that mindset, it makes such a difference. So I would say to that person or those people, like, what would it look like to invite play in the moment that you're in, even here right now?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Spontaneity is a word that I think about. And I love that you guys went out and looked at the moon last night. It was beautiful. The meteor showers that are coming. I mean, there are so many things that don't require tons of effort, and they don't even require a lot of time. I like how you guys incorporate into kind of everyday things that you're already doing, that you incorporate play into that. And if people are on just a struggle bus trying to figure out how do we do that, I think there's all kinds of fun things on the WinShape Marriage website that could help you get started in that. Would you rather even, I mean, just simple things.
I think we're up to like over 100 different date night ideas and things. So season specific, some that are just like random conversation starters maybe, and you're mentioning the would you rather, like would you rather have sticky feet all the time or itchy feet all the time, and thinking about how that could lead into a story maybe even a storyteller of like,
or just even laughter, like really? I can't even go there.
So I think that's great. And like the idea is we want it to feel like, the idea even coming out of this episode, listening to this episode, is to feel encouraged and just invited into playing, but it's not meant to be burdensome or meant to be it's another thing I've got to do better in my marriage. Like, I love how you said just finding ways to incorporate it into what you are already doing rather than having to add something brand new on top of it.
Well, and not taking yourself so seriously. Being able to laugh is a good thing.
Yeah. Is there anything else just from this conversation? I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I think it's been great just providing the personal examples from each of our marriages and our stories, and then also talking about the actual science behind it. Hey, it increases like the dopamine, I think. And then, the different play personalities. So kind of meshing what the research says with some personal examples. But is there anything else that you'd like to just leave our listeners with?
I would say even follow along with what your body is telling you as well. If you're in a space where it's like, I can't think of something that we can do for play or something along those lines, there's a book called The Body Keeps a Score, along with many other resources and things of that nature that pretty much spells out like our body is pretty much a physical kind of memory bank.
Okay.
And as we engage with things, we recognize, oh, like there is joy that I find in doing this. So engage with yourself, engage with your spouse in that sense of like, hey, for this time, we don't know what we can do for play, but like, let's just randomly walk around the house and see what happens. I'll treat it like this. When going out with our family and everything, our boys are usually like, we don't have to use the bathroom or whatever it is. And something that I tell them is just walk in the bathroom, look at the potty, and see what happens. Like we'll figure out the rest from there, but like we're just gonna walk in and see what happens. So in a very similar vein, like just simply walk around your house and think, what does it look like to play, and allow your body to engage and see what happens. And I think people might be pleasantly surprised as to what they find.
Yeah, that's great advice.
And I would say, I think a lot of times people are so tired and they think, oh, I'm too tired to play.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
If you would play, you would find yourself energized.
No, definitely.
And sometimes that is the best way to end the day. You play, you deeply exhale, and you rest well.
Yeah.
So even if you're tired, take a stab at it and see what happens.
Okay. That's great advice. Thank you guys so much for being here, talking us through this conversation. I really enjoyed it a lot. I feel like I got a lot out of it for myself, which is fantastic. And I hope those listening did as well. So thank you guys for being here.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for listening to the WinShape Marriage podcast. We'll be back next week with a new episode. Hey there. If you're enjoying this conversation, make sure to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more marriage resources. And let us know what you think of this episode in the comments below.